We're about to get started, but before we start, if you want refreshments, go ahead and get those now, and then if you'll be seated, we're about ready to get started. Those who want refreshments, don't be bashful. Yes, don't be shy. And we do want to thank Jimmy and Carol Ray of Crozier Pearson Cleburne Funeral Home, two of the folks who work with him there are here, for our refreshments tonight, and also Miss Catherine Easton for always preparing everything and making it look so nice. So we want to thank them. All right, we're ready to get started. We want to welcome you, and we'll ask Reverend Warren if he'll come up now and do our invocation. Amen.
Let us pray. Eternal God, we are thankful for one more chance. We're thankful that you have given us the opportunity to pass through this part of your vast creation. We're thankful for those who are here this evening, and we continue to ask for bountiful blessings upon them. And all of our requests is through the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. For he said one day, anything our hearts desire, ask it in his name. We pray, Holy Spirit, that you would grace us with your presence this evening, that everything we do and say might be done according to your will. We thank you, we praise you, we give you honor and glory, for it's in Jesus' name we humbly pray. Somebody help me say, amen.
Again, we want to welcome you here tonight. So glad you're with us. We're looking forward to the program that's planned tonight. And for those who will be speaking, invite you to come back next month. That's the second Thursday. And of course, we conclude the following month on the second Thursday. Next month, we'll be doing religion, and we'll be highlighting the histories of the African American churches on the east side and some of the pastors, current and past, who have built those churches and made an impact in the community. And we also have a special presentation by, it will really be a fellowship coalition that was started with Ascension Lutheran, and the pastor now happens to be with us, and St. Paul, and the father, who was the pastor then, the son is here with us, Lyndon, and we're so looking forward to that. All right, we want to get started tonight. We always allow the committee, the Legacy Committee, who sat down at the museum and planned out this and saw the excitement, and we allow each member of that committee just to give remarks, each and every one, or we always ask Miss Easton to kind of tell us what's going on at the community center. So we're going to start with her, and then we'll just go as printed. Lisa Majors next, Stephanie Montero, Reverend John Warren, who's with the East Cleveland Ministerial Alliance, and then our videographer, Dr. Mike Itashiki.
First of all, I want to ask those that are speaking, go real slow, because I have to run to Adams Elementary real quick. They're having literacy night, and I need to be there to take some pictures. So let's just go. Everybody just talk real slow. Kind of lose your notes, and because I really want to hear what's being done. So I am very grateful, too, that this is being recorded. But it has been such a joy and an honor to be part of this from the very get-go. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day, and I've said at every meeting, this has been a gift to the community. But today I'm going to call this a gift of love to the community. And we just learned so much, and just very grateful for it. Thank you, Mr. Warren. Thank you for everybody. And remember, we're going to go real slow, right? Y'all promise.
Now, I'll have to say while Stephanie's coming, she may not like that because she's got a love date tonight with her husband. So So she wants us to do just the opposite, go real fast so she can get out of here.
This is true. There is a sushi dinner in my future, but as I've said many times, thank you for coming. And this is just such a wonderful program. Means so much to me. And I'm honored that the Leyland Museum and the Railroad Museum have been able to kind of play a small role in helping this program come to be. And can't thank all of y'all enough for the huge amount of work that goes into putting together a series of 7 talks that are, an hour and a half long? I mean, that's a lot of information that we're all going to have access to now that we never had before. So thank you so much for being here.
I always want to voice my opinion concerning the committee, members of the committee. People have things to do, and when they sacrifice moments to be involved in whatever you want to do, that's a blessing. And Miss Majors and Miss Montero and Miss Easton, they have been here before us. I can recall our very first meeting when we were planning to put this together, and I just want to thank them for their diligence and their support. And we'll move on with the program as printed.
Dr. Mike, you have any comments?
Nothing to report this month. We're still going to collect all the video to kind of make it concrete and part of this.
All right. And
Hopefully we'll have it accessible at Hill College. That's kind of where I'm at.
so we thank Dr. Mike for the video, and we certainly, and I always have to say this, I know he gets tired of me saying it, but Matt Smith is really a blessing to this community in particular, and we certainly thank him for all of the good publicity. You know, there is publicity and there is publicity. Yeah. And this just happens to be good publicity, and he puts his heart and soul in it, and we really, really thank you and Dr. Mike for all that you're doing. Now we're ready for the good part, the historical part. We always try to give a little historical background of where African Americans in the United States have stood in terms of, and where they continue to stand in terms of their conditions. Good to see you here, Sister Patricia. In these states, so that as we present these programs on musicians from East Cleburne, on coming up the pastors, the churches, tonight we're looking at the world of work and community service. And as we present all these programs, we want to take a look at the bigger picture of the very same things, segregation, integration, all of that, happening in Cleburne, but what did it look like in the United States? And how did it affect Cleburne? Did we look the same as others? Did we do better? Did we do worse? What's the big picture? And then from these historical discussions, we really want to generate questions. So as you listen, and Pastor Wright of the Seventh-day Advent Church here in Cleburne does an excellent job of triggering thoughts in our minds about what has gone on for African Americans in the United States. It allows us to take that elephant in the room and just whip it on out of the way, because the myths we've heard, we can bust them wide open. And those things that we didn't know, we get the knowledge and we get the understanding, and we begin to know about each other because we know each other's story. And we don't have to listen to what we've heard of what we believe or our thoughts based on what the news media has told us things are or are not. So we're very thankful to Pastor Wright, who does a lot of research and a lot of digging on whatever subject we're talking about. Tonight we're looking at the world of work and community service and leadership. So he's going to give us now a little bit of an overview of how that world has been like and currently today is like for African Americans. Have we been, as African Americans, easily able to start our own businesses? We have a fourth-generation person from Baker Funeral Home here with us tonight. Started the business right here in Cleburne. Has that world been filled with discrimination? Is it better? Is it worse? What can we do as we gain knowledge to make it better? So we'll ask Pastor Wright now if he will come and present to us. And as he's coming, I told him he does all these beautiful PowerPoints, but nobody gets to see them but me from behind. So it would be wonderful if we could set his PowerPoints up. But he does a beautiful job.
Thank you, Dr. Dollarhide. Tonight, been given the topic, African-American job discrimination in America, its past and its present status. As we face the nation today, what type of divisiveness do we see? That's not rhetorical. That's a real question. What do we see in the nation as a whole, even here in Cleburne sometimes? I've been here about 8 years, and I stop by, I see people, I speak to people, and it's just like I'm talking to this little thing here. There is no response, no answer. But since I know who I am and who's my ultimate boss, Jesus Christ, what do? I keep on smiling. That's a person who needs Christ. But we have racism everywhere, ladies and gentlemen, all across America, in the White House. It's everywhere. Now, some people don't like to talk about it because it's very sensitive. Some don't want to talk about it because, well, you get me hot under the collar. Well, if you're in Christ, you should be cool under the collar. Amen. Christ was able to talk with everybody. Amen? Now, when we think about race, this is the subject. Job discrimination is another subject that people just don't want to talk about. They say it doesn't exist. There was a case over in Alabama, Mobile, Alabama, at the shipyard. And the gentleman who spoke to the supervisor or to the president of the company, other workers felt the same way that he felt. They came and brought their cases. The government got involved. But when it was all over, they said to them, no discrimination. Case dismissed. And most of those individuals, especially the guy who brought it up first, guess what happened to him? He was terminated, lost his job. Then he filed a lawsuit and got the thing around $600,000 back because of how they had treated him. So race is often at the forefront of American conversation. Lately, it has emerged with new urgency around discussion of policing. And a lot that we have seen, I've seen it with my own eyes, I have experienced it, and even had to calm some police officers down. Why are you talking to me that way? What have I done? Now, you just stop me, and you run up, and what do? You put your hand down toward your gun, and I'm sitting right here in a suit and everything else. Do I look like I'm a threat to you? In fact, I had one in the city of Cleburne to stop me. And I'm trying to figure out, why did he stop me? Policing. I had gotten down to 174 at that time, and then I saw the lights come on. So I stopped, I waited. And he said, well, You wonder why I stopped you? I said, yes, I am. Why? Stop sign, I stopped. Stoplight over here, I stopped. Speeding, I'm not. So why did you stop me? Well, I stopped you because you made a left turn, but you didn't use your blinker, your signal light. I said, oh, I see. I said, that's how the city of Cleburne works. Okay. Well, I said, whatever you say, officer. I'm not going to give him a difficult time. Whatever you say. If you need to write me a ticket, go ahead and write me a ticket, and I will pay it to the city. May I see your license? Said, sure, no problem. What do you do? So I'm a pastor here in Cleburne. He said, you're a pastor here in Cleburne? I said, yes, I am. And I said, this is my welcome to your city. Thank you. So he looked at me. He said, well, Mr. Wright, he said, what I'm going to do is let you go. Talking about policing now. He said, now I'm going to let you go, but please remember to use that signal light. I said, I'll make sure I do that, and thank you very much. And I went on my business. But racism, ladies and gentlemen, here I was, a black man at night, minding my own business, and there I was, being stopped by the police. So lately, we have this situation, especially with blacks being shot, no guns, anything. The lady in Fort Worth, whose father was married to a friend of mine. They're both deceased now. I think they're Tatiana. Yes. Didn't make sense. Ladies at home, you come, you don't even announce, but this is what happened. But yet, even as we are confronted with dramatic examples of ongoing racial tensions in America, ladies and gentlemen, there's still some people that don't believe that there is racial tension. And I hate to say it, but most Caucasian Americans remain convinced that race is no longer central to one's opportunities in life. But tonight, we shall see just a little different. Polling data shows that many believe these lingering conflicts represent the actions of a few bad apples. Not true. Are these beliefs accurate? What do we know about long-term trends in racial discrimination when it comes to jobs? Now, there's a review, a paper, a book, Harvard Business Review, reports on applicants and their interviews. This was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences by authors Lincoln Kielian, Diva, Pager, Arfin, not sure on his name, Midtboen, and Ole Hexel. What do these people have to say? Well, they analyzed data from 24 field experiments, which included data from more than 54,000 applications across more than 25,000 positions. Well, how did it work out? How did they do it? They used resume audits done through the mail or online. They had their people, their trainees, their workers, to submit fictitious resumes with equivalent qualifications and identifiable names, whether you're white or black. And we'll talk about that later. And also in-person audits. They had these participants to apply for these jobs. Well, what happened? Because of my time, I'm going to skip that. They said when they looked at the report, it showed evidence of discrimination against both black and Latino. These people that had applied. Since 1990, white applicants received, on an average, 36% more callbacks than black applicants, and 24% more callbacks than Latino applicants with, check this out, identical resumes. The only difference was color, what they perceived by name. That's why I said to my African American ladies and fathers, be careful what you name your child. Very important. I'll get into that just a little later. Because we are in a battle, we're in a struggle, and everybody does not do right. Everyone is not fair. And so they look at names. At other times, they have codes. The application that the person turns in, there's a code that's placed there. And when people see that, they know, oh, this is a black person. We don't want that person as part of our brand. Many ways it is done, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to the Latinos, they found evidence of a decline in discrimination over the past 25 years when it comes to jobs. But when it comes to black applicants, these researchers found that there was no change in hiring rates in the past 25 years. Still the same. The same struggle has not eased. Still what? The same struggle, ladies and gentlemen. But I thank God for those who don't look at the struggle and give up, but you keep on keeping on. Get that education. I keep saying to young people, get that education. Let it speak for you, because all employers are not the same. There are those who are fair and they want to treat everybody fairly and equally. So get your education. Don't be a dropout. If you decide to drop out, make sure you go to a trade school, get a trade of some sort, so that you can be productive in society, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody is not a college student. You're not college material. You know that. So if you're not college material, go to a vocational school. They have one down in Waco, one up in Fort Worth, and we have Hill College. Now that's a college, okay. There are many ways of becoming employed in this society in spite of the unfairness of those who are at the control. Moving on, I know that lady asked me to go slow, but I have to move fast because Dr. Warren has already talked to me. And Dr. Dollarhide has talked to me, so I'm moving fast. He has that clock on me. Now, the final results of this report is, at the initial point of entry, that is where they hire people, blacks remain substantially disadvantaged relative to equally qualified whites. And we see, they say, little indication of progress over time. What about the present time now, 2020? What's our present status? Well, you know, we talked about those names, right? And I have a list. ABC did a thing on the top 20 whitest and blackest names. These are names that the whites named as kids. So it helps out when it comes to job hiring. Molly, Amy, Claire, Emily, Katie, Madeline, Caitlin, Emma, Abigail. How many black folks you know named Abigail? You're not going to find that. Not too often. Carly, Jenna, Heather, Catherine, Caitlin again. C with the C wants to start with the K. Holly, Allison, Caitlin with the K-A-I-T. Hannah. I know a mother, she named her daughter Hannah. She did it for a reason. Catherine, amen. Now, the blackest girls' names. Imani, Ebony. These names give you away. So parents, grandparents, your kids are coming up, you need to work with them. You might want to change their names. Yeah, Shaniqua and all these give away, ladies and gentlemen. Lakeisha, Shanice, Precious. How many Caucasian people have named their children Precious? I don't know of one. And I've been around for 72 and a half years, okay? I don't know of one, ladies and gentlemen. Naya, Anil, Diamond. I know a lot of these people. You know, I have come in contact with those names, amen. Asia, Jada, Tiara, Kyra, Jasmine. I know you guys have heard of Jasmine. So many spellings, too. J-A-Z, J-A-Z-M-I-N, J-A-S-M-I-N, J-A-S-M-I-N-E. Seems like the blacks love Jasmine. And Raven, we have all of these names. I'm not going to talk about the boys, okay? I'm going to leave that. But I wanted to share that with you so that you would be aware of how they use names to discriminate against you. And this has been used over and over. In fact, the person is going through the papers, the resumes that have come in. Lakeisha, put a B. Code B, black. That goes to the side. That goes to the side. That goes to the side. The companies do not hire those that have those problems. They do not hire that many blacks in, ladies and gentlemen. So those who already have those names, in certain places, they are in trouble. But get your education, let your education speak for you. That's the most important thing. I keep saying to young people, get your education, get the book, get off the TV, get off the iPad unless you're studying, unless you're researching. Playing games will not get you anywhere. Get in there and study, study, study. And then I said to the young men, pull your pants up. Be dignified. You come to my office looking for a job, you tell them over and over, you speak to a lot of young people. I say, when I see how you're dressed, it tells me whether I want you here or not. So I say, you come in with your pants, yes. Even though you might have a jacket on, but you come with your pants hanging, I write you off right away. Why? We don't want that as part of our brand. We're not going to do that. I'm a walker, but I forgot the cameras are here, so let me come back where I am. But it's important that the young people understand how important it is to dress right when you're going in for a job. Or they just didn't like me. Fix yourself up. Like you're going to see the president. Any president. Be proud of who you are. Job interviews are very important. My first look at you tells me whether or not I want to hire you. And this is why, as parents, we need to teach our young people. Unfortunately, we have parents raising young people. No instruction. They come up, and what happens? They don't know. And that's where you come in as a parent or a grandparent. Rushing on. I have 5 minutes. Okay. 2 minutes. Quickly then. Today, we have discrimination by race, face-to-face discrimination. I was called in for an interview in the city of Dallas. I was younger. I came in, taken this test, had done well on it. Severe as being a surveyor. You don't see black surveyors out there. They're all Caucasian, basically. If you see a black one, that's unique. I had applied for this job at 17 years of age. And I had passed it high. See, the name Billy Wright, they thought it was a Caucasian guy. So I passed the test, did all of that. They told me to come in for an interview. So I come to this big office and everything, walking in. I'm getting back where I am. I'm walking. And I come in, lady say, you here to see who? I say, well, someone, they've asked me to come in for an interview. So she called, I guess, the president of the company. So he came out. May I help you? I said, yes, I think so. I said, you guys asked me to come here. I'm here for an interview. You're here for an interview? In this place? I said, yes, I am. He said, well, who are you? I said, I'm Billy Wright. He said, you Billy Wright? I said, yes, I'm Billy Wright. A mistake maybe has been made in calling you here for an interview today. What we'll do is get back with you at another time. We'll call you. I said, well, thank you, sir. I understood that right away. The call back, I'm still waiting for it. All these years later, I'm still waiting for that call from that company. I knew I was not going to get a call back because when he saw the skin color, we don't want a black in this employee. Guys gone through everything, surveying, that type of stuff. I was introduced to it back in high school. So I knew what I was doing, the angles and all of that. So I scored highly on it. But when he saw me face to face, didn't even go to the office, just stood right there in front of the secretary. Interview that was to be, interview is now over. That's dealing with what we call discrimination by face, seeing the color. And it still happens today, ladies and gentlemen. The other experience I had was working on a government job. I got injured, and the gentleman asked me the question. Here I'm talking about being hired, not qualified, but being hired by who you know. A lot of people are hired by who you know, not what you know. I knew my skill sets on the job. Got injured, guy had to fill out the papers, brought the papers. Mr. Wright? Yes, sir. I need you to do me a favor. I said, okay, no problem. Bleeding like crazy. And he said, I need you to fill out these forms for me. I said, fill out these forms for you? He said, yes. I said, now, my supervisor, that's you. You're supposed to fill out these forms. I'm not supposed to do that. He said, well, I hate to tell you this, but he said, I need your help. He said, I can't read. Now, he's a supervisor on a government job, federal. And when he told me that, did I get upset? No. I said, sir, okay, I'll be happy to do that for you. So I filled out my whole injury form and all of that. And I'm not sure how he signed his name. I didn't ask, didn't look, okay? But he had to turn it in. So here's a gentleman. He's my supervisor. He's not qualified, to be in the job. But he knew somebody who got the job for him. I'm working, quote, under him, qualified, but not qualified enough to take that job. Why? Because of color. Workplace discrimination is still here with us, and it's going to be here for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. Complaint data shows that discrimination can often manifest or reveal itself in subtle ways, such as the assignment workers are given, their pay or the benefits they receive, and the way their performance is judged and rewarded. And many times that is subjective, and especially the black lady, because many times they see black ladies as, you're not supposed to be in the office. Your history is serving. So in a kitchen somewhere. The black lady has been one who has been the breadwinner in many homes. And I even hate to say it today, the black woman is still the breadwinner in many homes today. Where are some of the men? I don't know. But I thank God there are men who take care of their families. I thank God there are men who are no longer in the home, but they are responsible men. There are a lot of black men out there. Everybody likes to say, no, judge them by one. You can't judge all blacks by one black, like you cannot judge all whites by one white. That would not be reality. The reality is you have good and bad on both sides, ladies and gentlemen. But one thing I want you all to understand is that if we're going to change things, we have to learn how to be fair ourselves in all situations at all times. Amen? On my conclusion, sir.
I see it up there.
Conclusion.
It's not as long as the other.
Conclusion from the study, from all that has happened today. The ultimate end is, which is what we call differential treatment, treating whites more favorably than African American has not changed in America. America still has a long way to go when it comes to fair hiring practices for blacks and Latinos. Who can make a difference? We can make a difference. We know what's going on. And the upcoming generation, if you become an employer, think about fairness all the way around. Don't worry about color. I'm still amazed at how people get so upset about color. If I cut you, you bleed. You cut me, I bleed. If I get slammed into a wall, I have a hickey or something on my head. So will you. Only difference is, and I'll be doing a message on that this coming weekend, the God of color. And folks, the most important thing is remember, our God is not a prejudiced God. And if we say that we what? His, then we're not prejudiced either. If I'm an employer, then what? I'm not going to be prejudiced. If I'm a black employer or white employer, it doesn't matter what type of employer you're going to be. I will be fair in every situation. Number one, why? Because I am moved by the Spirit of the Most High God. God bless you and keep looking up. I'm done, Elder.
All right.
All right. We always get such good and interesting information from Pastor Wright. A couple of things, though. I do want to give kudos to Chief Servants and the Cleburne Police Department because they made an effort, particularly Chief Servants, made an effort to actually have dialogue between pastors in the African American community and their policemen. And we started that, and I think Matt was there and even recorded it in the newspaper. And we made a promise to keep it going. And needless to say that there were maybe some police officers who did not like that, and they're no longer with the Cleburne Police Department. So we have to give credit to whom credit is due. And Chief Servants, yes, he's doing a great job. Thank you, Pastor Eddie. And he is very, very open to seeing that the problems that we recognize are still in all communities, that those problems are handled correctly. And then let me just give a shout out, since Pastor Wright mentioned that. I'm going to have to give kudos to the Keene Police Department, because one Sunday morning I was trying to get here at confession time. And that ticket I didn't get, I really should have gotten it. But after he stopped me and realized that my husband had been a veteran from the tags on the car, and that I was a pastor trying to get to my flock, that he wouldn't even look at my license plate, license tag, or my insurance. And I kept trying to give him to him. He says, no, just slow down. So we have to give some kudos and thanks to the police departments that are trying to make a difference. And they are around here. So my little 5 minutes is to talk about wealth and job discrimination, or the difference in wealth. Let me see exactly what my title is here. It is Unequal Wealth Accumulation Opportunities for Black Workers. And I really enjoyed what Pastor Wright was saying. He brought in first the whole idea of racism, something that, like anything else, if it does not directly affect us, we somehow seem to think it does not exist. We can't even relate to it if it doesn't affect us. It's like things happening in your family. If you raised a kid and 5 children and none of them were drug addicts, it's very difficult to sympathize with a family that may have a couple of kids who went into drugs. And so we have to really understand that the bottom line that we spoke of in Pastor Wright's presentation and wealth is the fact that black workers don't earn as much, are not hired as often, and are not hired in positions for which they are very well qualified as often as white workers, and that accounts for a difference in wealth accumulation. It is a problem, and we have to recognize it. Why? Because what is wealth accumulation? It is simply being able to have economic security. It's different from your income. All of us who work have an income, and sometimes that income goes from month to month and might be a week shorter than the month. That's not wealth, that's income. We have that. But if we're able, because we've prepared ourselves, because we are well capable and want to do the job, to move up to higher ranks and higher levels in any job, whether it's corporate America, whether we are building our own companies. If we're able to do that, we can begin to pay bills and have a little bit left over to put in a savings account. And so wealth becomes important. With that little that's left over, we might be able to eventually buy a home. We can get a nice car and put in the garage. But you cannot do that when all you are able to do is pay the bills. That's why wealth accumulation is so important. And at this point in our country, we know that the lack of wealth among black people has been a thing that has happened in our country for generations. There were even rules at one time, right after slavery. And we have to understand this, that black people were sold as property. And so they could not accumulate wealth. And then they were told they were going to be given 10 acres and a mule, just to kind of help them get on their feet right after slavery. That never happened. Sometimes it's the whole thing of reparations is brought up. You know, paying me for all the work that I did, or not me, but my generations back did. And that idea is always knocked down. So there is a difference when you're not able to accumulate wealth and when you are able to accumulate wealth. It's said, the Federal Reserve System has said that for the typical black family has 10 cents for every dollar held by the typical white family. That's a vast difference. The typical black family has 10 cents for every dollar earned by a typical white family. Typical black family, and typical we know we mean on average, earns 10 cents. We know women, and that's a big thing, women, they just had something on yesterday where women make less per dollar for the same job, same or more qualifications than a man. Well, that same thing happens with blacks as far as income. A typical white family earns 90 cents more on the dollar than a typical black family. That causes a deficit. That deficit means I don't have the wealth, the income, the property to pass down to my children and my children's children. And while that is important for every family, it's also important in the black family. That difference in wealth means that I have to live in an area where I can either rent an apartment or rent a house because I don't have the wealth to buy a house like on the other side of town. There is a difference. And so the first thing we need to do is to become aware. We need to be aware that there are still discriminatory hiring practices, that the names are important. You are sometimes denied because of the name. But even it's important to know that educational levels are important, that blacks can still go in with the same qualifications or more, even in our school systems, in all types of jobs. And they're looked over year after year after year, while others less qualified can be elevated and hired in those jobs, and sometimes younger ones, much younger, can come in and get a job that an experienced African American has been looked over for years. Now that's the elephant in the room. And I'm sort of preaching to the choir when it comes to our African American brothers and sisters, but we all need to be aware that there is such a thing as a difference in wealth and a difference in income. That difference comes from discriminatory hiring practices. And we need to do something about it more than just talk. Now, we have some candidates now who are running. That's where we can step in. And one of the things they all talk about is employment being higher now for African Americans. And many African Americans are looking and saying, where? I want to go wherever that employment is higher. But it has been occurring over the years, that employment. That's because we're beginning to take a look at hiring practices. And that's kudos to America, that we can begin in some places to see this person is qualified and they should be hired and will be hired. But we have a long way to go. So listen to the candidates. Listen to those who are talking about cutting back on student loans. That's important. When you try to go to college to better yourself, and then you get out and you have all this money you've got to pay back, and you can't get a great job to help pay it back. That's important. Listen to the others as they talk about the difference in wealth. It is a real thing, and we just want you to be aware of it. Now, as Reverend Warren comes, we're going to be looking at even the difference in wealth cannot stop you from becoming the best that you can become. As Reverend Wright was saying, we talked about the names, and that's it's coming out of pride of knowing who we are, and we understand that. But unfortunately, it is still a black eye for many of us, young people trying to get hired. But as he comes, we're going to look at how African Americans, even in times of more discrimination than now, were still able to succeed, and still able, and I don't want to give all his stuff away, still able to get jobs. That comes from tenacity, from that understanding, and from that desire to do better. So I'm going to ask Reverend Warren if he'll come now, and we're just going to talk. He will be giving you the names, and you'll see on all the posters there, of a few African Americans, particularly during the 60s and the 70s, who succeeded anyway, and we can still do it. All right, Reverend Warren.
All right. If you have a program, you might turn to the back side of the page. We have a list of names there of the African Americans who, some of them attended Booker T. Washington, and some of them graduated from Booker T. Washington, and some went on to graduate from Cleburne High School. And I want to thank everybody who gave me their bio, and of course we don't have the time to read everything about that person at this time, or those persons at this time, but I want to share with you some of the things that they managed to do even in the 60s and 70s. Although there were many other blacks from East Cleburne who have excelled in work, we're highlighting those who attended Booker T. Washington and in some cases Cleburne High School at the time of integration. Although they were denied the best of education materials and equipment, they managed to excel because the excellent teachers at Booker T were among the first blacks hired for positions in 1960 and 1970, when it was very difficult for blacks to get a job in the corporate world or in the education system. These are people who have been promoted as managers, supervisors in the corporate world, like Pam Grover, who was the first professional black woman to become an officer of a bank in Johnson County. Some went to historical black colleges and universities and became dentists, professors, lawyers, and principals. Some had successful careers with the U.S. government, like Dr. Burnell Corsi, who retired from government as an economist. Dr. Burnell Coursey finished Booker T. Washington High School in 1950. He went on to Prairie View A&M University, where he majored in sociology, and he he finally got his master's and doctor's degree, and he ended up one of the professors on that campus, and later was hired by the United States government as an economist. The desire to excel and be the best has been passed down to their children, like Benny Jean Huss Lister, whose youngest daughter is the judge of Dallas Municipal Court number 4, or like Lyndon and Brenda Overton, whose daughter was employed as an elementary school teacher for Cleburne ISD before going on to another district this year. And so I want you to take a look at those names. James Nathan Baker, founder of Baker Funeral Home, and we'll be getting to that in a few minutes. Dr. Alvin Matthews, he's a dentist in Phoenix, Arizona. His dad was the principal of Booker T. Washington High School. Dr. Joseph Matthews, an educator in Indiana. Mrs. Erin Matthews, she was a teacher in Indiana, and she was also Michael Jackson's third grade teacher. Ms. Herbie Phillips Stone, she was a teacher in Waco, Texas, and a community volunteer. And I just mentioned Dr. Burnell Coursey, head of Prairie View A&M and an economist for the U.S. government. Norma Littles, my classmate, 1958 CISD teacher, and she also was the first hired Southwestern Bell telephone company. Rubinelle Fuller graduated in 1960. She taught school at Alvarado Independent School District. Zetta Overton, 64, hired at AT&T and became a supervisor there. Harold Fuller was recruited by Texas Power and Light when he first came out of high school. He did not go to college, but he ended up as supervisor for Texas Power and Light, and he worked for them for 42 years. He just retired a few years ago. Don McNeil went to work in 1969 for Texas Power and Light. Lyndon Overton went to work for him in 1971, Texas Power and Light. Brenda Grover Overton, First National Bank in 71. Don Grover, 1971, Texas Power and Light. And I don't know when he's going to get through. I saw him out here the other day up on the pole, hooking them up. Yeah. How long have you been with them, Don?
48 years.
48 years. Isn't that something? My, that's good. 48. Huh? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Pam Fuller Grover, 1971, First State Bank, Wells Fargo, and assistant vice president. Isn't that something? Came out of old Booker T. Washington High School. Isn't that something? Michael Fuller, 1979, quality control with John Manville and several other jobs. Also assistant manager of Walmart at one point in time. Charles Fuller was the first African American hired by the Santa Fe Railroad to drive the train. We were allowed to clean it up, but he got a job driving. Amen. All right. Benny Jean Huss, teacher and principal, daughter elected judge in Dallas County. And now we want to give a warm welcome to our keynote speakers. Our first is Ms. Keosha D. Baker, fourth generation owner of Baker Funeral Home. Baker Funeral Home was on the corner of Royal and Atlantic Street. Some of you may remember that. And Ms. Golda Smith was the director here in Cleburne. And I tell you what, she was a powerful person, yeah, a good person, and she kept everybody in this community straight. I wish we had that character now because she kept the pastors of the churches straight. She was a great woman. So we'll have Kiosha, would you come now and speak, and then after which we'll come back and we'll introduce our own ambassador, Francis Hafford. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Warren, to the committee, and to you, the city of East Cleburne. Give yourselves a hand. This is such a wonderful opportunity for me to come and share a little bit about our history here at historic Baker Funeral Home now. I can't really get 100 years worth of history in my little 15 minutes, so I'm just going to kind of give a brief biopsy, and we're going to talk about on goal here in just a minute. But my great-grandfather, Mr. James Nathan Charles Baker Sr., started Baker Funeral Home in 1917 here in Cleburne. Mr. Baker was a Pullman porter for the Santa Fe Railroad, and during his travels here, he noticed that there was not a black funeral home, a funeral home to bury blacks. You know, we were segregated at that time very heavily, and so he went in business with his mother-in-law. Let me kind of digress a little bit and tell you a little bit about her. James is the son of Reverend Henry Baker and Mrs. Mattie Gaston Barnes Baker. Miss Mattie Gaston was a principal. She grew up in the field. She worked in the field, didn't have much formal education, but she met Mr. Dr. Ransom Barnes, and he was a principal here in Cleburne. And together she worked and helped him, and she became a teacher. She took courses and classes and so forth. So when James came to town on the railroad, he paired up with their daughter. And her name was Ransom Antoinette Barnes. And thus the Baker Funeral Home was started. Let's see, 1917, we were on the corner of Royal and Atlantic, a property we still own today. It was a little shack, a little 3-room home. And we operated it until 1980. We closed it down in 1980. And I think we tore it down in 84. But we still maintain that property here. But let me go back. In 1922, I'm kind of skipping around for the sake of time, but in 1922, Mr. Baker was licensed an embalmer for the state of Texas. And that same year is when he hired Miss Argodia Sedalia Smith. Many of you may remember her. We called her Aunt Gold. Aunt Gold was the mayor of Cleburne, quote unquote. And let me just stop there and give you some of her accolades and a little bit about her life. Aunt Gold was she got her education there at Booker T. She went on to Mary Allen Seminary in Crockett, and she graduated from Bishop College. She was one of the first black female licensed funeral directors in the state of Texas. She was a member of Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church, Galilee Griggs District Association, the Texas Baptist Women's Convention, life member of the National Baptist Convention, Incorporated Missionary Assembly, Church Women United. She was the past matron and founder of the Almo Chapter, number 97, Order of the Eastern Star, board member, Independent Funeral Directors, founder of the Ladies National Auxiliary of Funeral Directors and Morticians Association, a life board member of the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association, membership in the NAACP. In 1961, she was honored by the Independent Funeral Directors Association of Texas as Woman of the Year. And I'll skip down and tell you that she was on December 2nd, 1976, was proclaimed official Argodia S. Smith Day here in Cleburne. I tell you all of that because Baker Funeral Home would not be what it is today without the work of Aunt Gold. Aunt Gold managed the funeral home for 48 years. She died here in Cleburne in 1984, and we buried her over in Greenlawn. Well, she's in Chambers. She's over in Chambers and lays to rest there. I go back, so from 1922 to 1926, funeral home here flourished, burying the black population for pennies on the dollar. You know, most were just services given away. But in 1926, my great-grandfather retired from the Santa Fe Railroad and went to work full-time and built the Baker Funeral Home. And it's there at 301 East Rosedale. And it started out as a little house that was a shoe shine shop where his father, Reverend Baker, lived. He founded the Baker Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is down the street at 1050 East Humboldt. So from there, the Bible says that a man, wise man, sets up a foundation or sets up wealth for his children and an inheritance for his children and his children's children. And so we're afforded today the opportunity to stand to you as the fourth generation of Baker Funeral Home, solely owned by the Baker family. For 1917, we were 100 years old. We still service Johnson, Tarrant, Dallas, Wise, Mineral Wells. Let me go back to Mineral Wells because that's going to give you a little bit about the work that they were able to accomplish. Dr. Dollarhide was saying that, you know, a lot of times they came from nothing and were able to accomplish a lot with the little that they had. So in 1935, Baker Funeral Home expanded to Mineral Wells, Texas. So we had the Cleburne office, the Fort Worth branch, and the Mineral Wells facility. So we were a tri-city corporation. In 1938, he founded the Diamond Mutual Burial Association, and that was so blacks could get insurance. So for the first time, we could have insurance so we could pay for our funerals. When building in 1946, when they renovated the space there on Baker at 301, he insisted only on using black contractors. He used materials that were purchased from the U.S. government and renovated that property, and now it sits as 55,000 square feet, and we own the entire city block there in the heart of the medical district in Fort Worth. Mr. Baker also purchased the People's Burial Park because we didn't have anywhere to be buried. They wouldn't let us bury in Fort Worth, so we had to go out a little bit, and we went to Haltom City. And there the People's Burial Park was formed and founded, and it sold spaces to families so that the blacks could be buried there, and it's also a historic designation now. So that's a historic landmark. In 2004, I had, they were doing a big expansion on Rosedale. And they were inching us away, taking our property to widen the street. And I said, no, I had to pray about that thing. I said, no, Lord, you know, you gave us this. He worked hard and he toiled to get this. And I just can't see them coming in and just taking it out. So I had the funeral home designated a historic marker, Texas landmark in 2004. So they can't take any more of our property. They can't take any more of our property. So, but we're just grateful to God and to the city of Cleburne. As I said, we still own property here. We still come here and are available to you for services for all of your funeral needs. We have a long history here. I told you about, let's see, I'm the 4th generation. Let me tell you, Mr. Baker had 10 children. 3 died at birth. But all of his children were trained in funeral service. You talked about getting a trade. Everybody is not college material. Although most of his children did go to college, some of them went to the Army, to the military, and so forth, but they all had that funeral home training and background. And so they all worked, every last one of them. Every last one of them worked in the funeral home in some capacity. My grandfather, Mr. Herbert Baker, was the 2nd black allowed in the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service. That's the funeral trade school in Dallas. He was the first black appointed by Governor Dolph Briscoe as a member of the State Board of Morticians. He served in that capacity for 6 years. I'm talking about Mr. Herbert Baker now. Was appointed by the governor November the 18th, 1977, to the State Board of Morticians. He was some funeral director. And he was a member of the Baker Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church. He served as pastoral steward, Sunday school teacher, layman, chairman pro tem of the steward board, conference superintendent of Sunday schools, and many other capacities. He served 6 years on the Park and Recreation Board of the City of Fort Worth, climaxing as chairman of the board. He served as president of the Independent Funeral Directors Association for 2 years. He served as president of the State Board of Morticians for 6 years. And so thus came the 3rd generation. And we have now James Nathan Charles Baker. He's our president. You know him as Jimmy. He's been our president since 1984. My grandfather died in 84, and Jimmy took over in 1984 and brought us to today. So I just wanted to give you just a little brief kind of history of the historic Baker Funeral Home that started right here, a couple blocks over, East Cleburne. So they say, is there any good thing that can come out of Nazareth? Yes, there is good things that can come out of Cleburne. Thank you so much for your time.
One of the things that I remember about Aunt Gold, when someone passed, she would bring the hearse to pick up the body at the home and everything, and she had a touch that you just couldn't get rid of. You know, she'd come in and she'd just take over the situation. You know, and she'd tell us, "Y'all stop that crying. We don't want to hear all that. Where is your policy?" Yes, she was some kind of woman. Where is your policy? All right. Our next speaker is Francis Hafford. Francis Fuller Hafford, and I tell you what, I was really moved when I heard Francis speak at the prayer breakfast. How long ago has that been? Yeah. But anyway, I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'm going to let her come and tell you all about that family. That is a great family. That is a great family. They lost their mother and dad, I think, within a week of each other, but they still succeeded. Isn't that something? Come right on, Francis. Give her a hand.
Good evening to all of you. I'm going to start first about when the transition from when I was at Booker T. Washington going to Cleburne High School. So I'll be here a while. Because that's 53 and a half years ago. But I remember it just like it was yesterday. It's going to be some pros and it's going to be some cons in that transition. But the pros outweighed the cons. It was Booker T. Washington on the grounds where we are here right now. I went to school here from the first grade all the way through my junior year of high school. And we had great teachers here. We had great discipline. I remember Miss Matthews was my teacher in elementary, and we were on the playground, and all she had to do when the recess was over, she would just come to the front door of the school and stand out there. She didn't walk all the way down to around us. She'd walk out there and wave her hand, and here we come. And that's just the way it was. I mean, you did whatever the teachers told you to do, and in our household, the teacher was always right. Yeah, they were right. You didn't come home and say this or that about that. And another thing about our family, when we got to this transition, we were on we had PE, and Miss Nadine Williams was my basketball coach, and she also was my PE teacher. So we would always go to Carver Park through the alley there and go to Carver Park, and we'd play tennis and softball and all that. Well, this particular day, it was in May of '65, the spring of '65. After the class was over, she had us to sit up in the bleachers where the baseball diamond was. And she stood in front of us and she says, this will be your last time here at Booker T. Washington. She said you will be going to Cleburne High School in the fall, or September. And we just looked at each other. We didn't really understand what she was trying to tell us. And then after we were walking back, we kind of mumbled among ourselves and talked. But the reality of the thing is we didn't know that when we went to Cleburne High, she wasn't going to be there with us, too. So after that, the summer came, and we thought about it, and we kind of called and talked to one another about it, and we said, well, one good thing about it is when we get to Cleburne High School, we're going to have a really good basketball team because we had a good team here, and we'll go there, and there'll be some girls over there. I know they got somebody that can play. I got over there, no basketball. That's a con. And they didn't get basketball at Cleburne High School till 1976. None of my sisters got to play basketball. But the boys got to play. They got to play basketball because they had it there. And so we just couldn't understand that, and so that was a letdown for us. But in our household, I knew I had to go to school because there was two things you was going to do at 507 Olive Street: go to school and go to church. There was two things you was going to do no matter what. You don't have no say-so over that. So when I went to Cleburne High School, we had houses there then. We had Boyden House, Willard, and Adams for the girls. So I was in Boyden House, and some of the girls, one of my best friends now, which is Jane Christberg Burton, she was in Boyden House, and she tells me today, right now, we're still good friends. She tells me that some of them had to move to the annex because we were overcrowded because we had to come in. And she was saying, why did we have to move? And then she also told me, she said, I thought I could write until you got here. And then we were very good friends and still are. But there was no controversy in that transition far as us learning or whatever, because Booker T prepared me when I got over there. Right. I was prepared. But matter of fact is, when we got there, we had been cheerleaders at Booker T. Well, they already picked the cheerleaders for Cleburne High School because they did it in the fall. So when we got there, we couldn't be a cheerleader. That's a con. When we got there, they didn't have basketball. That's a con. When we got there, none of my teachers was there but Mr. Cotton. He was there, but when I got there, I needed 20 credits to graduate. I only needed English and American history. So I didn't need any math, I didn't need any science. And I started to take calculus, and I thought about that. I said, no, I thought hard on that. And when Mr. Cotton, but I would see Mr. Cotton, and he was always the same, you know. But I didn't take that. But another thing, another con was when we got there, they had the programs VOE, vocational education, and distributed education, which is you could go and work, go there and go to school a half a day, and then you could leave and go to work. And if anybody needed to work, it was us. It was 9 kids, and so, but they would already pick them. So we said, well, what we gonna do over here besides just go to school? Well, I took typing, shorthand, accounting, and business, and those was my courses that I took. And I don't think at that time we had free lunch because I took my lunch. My mother would get up and fix us breakfast every morning, and then we would take our lunch. And my dad worked right across the street from the high school, so I would ride with him sometimes, and we would just walk on over to the school. But to say that and to say all of this, they treated me well. I wasn't mistreated. And matter of fact, right now our class, we meet once every Thursday and have lunch together. Those that want to come, they email all my classmates. We graduated with 266. And we all get a restaurant. If it's in Cleburne, Fort Worth, or where we go and we have lunch together, we keep that bond. And I've been on trips with them to the places. I mean, it's just been it was a great experience, and God put them in my life, and I'm glad it was in the era that that I went. And because I tell all Michael and all of them, we paved the way for y'all, honey. We went over there and just didn't have, we didn't have anything, but we made it, you know, because when you go in an environment like that, you have to make sure that you are doing the right thing for yourself, and you make sure that you are obedient to what you're supposed to do when you go to school. Because that we were taught that at Booker T. We were taught to do, because, you know, they paddled us here. When you go to the cloakroom with Miss Kazan, you line up. You had to line up. You come in, she'd go out to the, Miss Kazan would go out of the room, and she said, now y'all don't be talking, keep it quiet. When she come back, somebody was talking, and nobody would say who it was. She said, everybody just line up. Oh, I hated that. I just hated that when she would do that. But when I went to Cleburne High School, we were prepared, so we made good grades. You know, we wasn't behind on anything. Everything we did, you know. So we graduated, and after I graduated, I went to college that year, and then I worked the summer before I graduated. I worked at the Santa Fe Railroad in a lady's place for 2 weeks. She was on vacation. And then I worked at ASCS where Lonnie Watson worked. I worked there a week or two. And then I went on and worked at Geneva Overton Center, and worked there about 3 years or 4. It was more or less a volunteer kind of a job, but I really liked it. We helped the kids. Most of the parents there worked at Ranger or Walmart, and Walls. They worked there, and we would keep those kids, and their parents would come pick them up when they got off from work. In July of '71, I got a call, and it was from Mr. Don Smith, superintendent of the Cleburne Independent School District, and he had me to come in for an interview, and I started working for the administration bill and payroll in 1971, and I retired with 40 years of service. And right now, I am working part-time at Crozier Pearson Cleburne Funeral Home, the best funeral home here in Cleburne, and for Jim and Carol, and which are white. They're white, but you couldn't ask for any better people to work for. That, you know, you don't work for them, you work with them. They are just that good. I've been there 20 years. This is my 21st year there. And God always made a way for me, no matter what the circumstance was, because right now, I'm so close to the funeral home, I almost could just walk there from my house. And then when we moved the administration building right there on Ridgeway, I was just right across the street. When I first started working for the funeral home, I started working at Mountain Valley. What it was, I wasn't looking for a job. I had a full-time job, but it was Jimmy Ray was in the paper, Cleveland Times Review, and he was on the front page. He had the he had the shovel, and he was getting ready to build Mountain Valley. So I sent him. They lived one street over from me on Crestwood, and I sent him a card, tell him congratulations that you being a manager of a funeral home, because he always was a director, but he never was a manager. So Carol, his wife, called me the very next day. She got that card, and she said, "But by the way, would you like to do visitations for us sometime?" And I thought, well, yeah, but I didn't know people was dying every 30 minutes. Honey, I thought, Lord. When I called, and so I said, yeah. And so I was the only one there. I was the first one that they hired for, and I would go drive to Mountain Valley, and if we had a visitation, I'd get off of work from Cleveland Independent School at 4:30, and then I would get to Mountain Valley by 5, and then we had the visitation. See, we just one doing visitation input, one, and then I would go and put the alarm on and then go home. You get out of there by 8:30 or 9, and then they decided to build the funeral home where I am now on Ridgeway, and I haven't been anywhere else since. But if any of you need your pre-knee done, you come see me. I've got cards in my purse, Brenda. If y'all need a pre-knee done, that's what I do. I do a lot of things with it, but it's really interesting because you help people in that field. When they lose their loved ones or whenever, it's just a rewarding thing. But I see a lot of people, because if I didn't have the funeral home, I don't know what I would. I mean, I do a lot of volunteer work too, but I wouldn't be able to see some of these people that you see when they come in. I see some of my classmates that live away. Their parents still live here and they die, and then they come back, and I get to see them. But you get to see people all the time and express their feelings to them, and it's a caring situation like that. But overall, in the transition and my jobs and all that, the transition going from Booker T. Washington to Cleburne High School, it was great for me, and I'm glad it happened in my time.
All right. Again, I want to thank all of you for submitting your bio, and we're going to keep that and enshrine it in our history for Booker T. Washington High School. That's our purpose here. And I want to thank you, Ms. Baker, for coming and being with us and helping us remember that history. And in reference to what you were saying about the discipline here at Booker T, I can remember one Friday evening, about 10 or 15 of us, we shot a hooky. And we went down to Grapey, Buffalo Creek down there to swim. And so Monday morning when we came to school, Prof. Kelly was standing at the door with the strap on his shoulder. And he just stepped back and just ushered everybody in the office there. And John Charles Phillip, we were standing by a magazine rack, and he took one of those Life magazines and put it down in the back of his pants. And you could hear that strap all over, all over the building. And later on, Sarah Jones went and told Prof that he had that magazine in it. He brought him back up there. Told him, I'll tell you what, I am really proud of my heritage, being here at Booker T. It was a great life, great memories and everything. And thank you all for participating and coming and supporting us with this program. And I'll tell you what, it's been a blessing for Reverend Dollarhide and Reverend Wright to be here in Cleveland and come and help get this going. Reverend Stevenson and my pastor, Reverend Newman, and his wife, Sister Ethel Newman, and all of us. I tell you what, it's just been great. It's been great. Somebody need to eat those sandwiches over there. Come right on.
Thank you, Ed. And again, just following up, we thank you for coming. Sometimes we hold you a little longer. We get so excited about these programs, and but we do want to just recognize the names of those who are here. Lyndon Overton, would you stand? All right, so we can see you. Brenda Overton. Don Grover. Pam Grover. These are Michael Fuller. All right. It's Charles. Now, you would know which ones are here or not here. Charles Fuller. And we know Miss Herbie Stone is deceased. And Dr. Corsi is still living, but he's not here. Norma Littles is not here tonight. Okay. Ruby Nell Fuller. Zetta Overton. They're not here. Harold Fuller. And Benagine Lister. Francis Hafford, we thank you so much. I may have to see you about changing my pre-need over to you. Yeah, all right. And then we have, of course, Keosha Baker, 4th generation, and we want to thank you. Thanks again to Crozier Pearson Cleburne for the refreshments tonight. Do partake of them. And with that, we will see you next Thursday, second Thursday, where we'll be doing religion. Amen? Good night. Pastor Patricia.